So we're going to talk over the next 1 hour or so about how you guys can build a mobile business. I just don't mean a mobile app, I mean a mobile business. So let's see some of the figures that apply to India and the globe in general. So we've seen about 120 million internet users in India, right? People accessing through broadband, net cafes, work, etc. But we say that we're going to see about 300 million by 2014, which means 200 more million users are going to be online. Where are these 200 more million users going to come from? Where are they going to come from? Anyone? From the village? No, I mean, what is going to be their access point? That's right. It's likely to be mobile. Mainly, internet usage through smartphones is what's going to drive this growth. We saw about we're going to see about 56% annual growth over the next 5 years, which is phenomenal. The kind of growth that we're going to see on mobile usage of internet is what you all need to take into cognizance and think about building your business to tap that. Some of the other facts, there was some research done and people were asked, are you going to spend more time, as much time or less time on the internet in future? Guess what? 66% of smartphone users said, I'm going to spend more time. Computers, and I mean PCs, it's more or less the same. About 43% said yes, the same amount of time, 43% said a little more time. But it's interesting because very few said, I'll actually spend less time, which means that the smartphone user is your mature user who's going to be accessing the internet through the mobile, accessing services, accessing the web, accessing applications, and that is where the opportunity lies. Internet usage on mobile, or on smartphones in particular, can be roughly 18 times that on a normal mobile phone. So while even today we have only about 4% users on smartphones, we have 26% of video views on smartphones. And we have 7% of searches happening on smartphones. Because your normal mobile phones are fairly okay to do search. But when you go into a little more involved kind of activity like watching videos, smartphones are really conducive to doing that. Some of the activities that people do on smartphones, right? Browsing the internet. 76% have browsed the internet on smartphones. 74% have emailed. Strangely, only about 65% seem to have accessed social networks on mobile phones. So these are some of the activities the top 10 activities that users on smartphones are doing. And you need to keep a track, if you're in the mobile business, you need to keep a track of what these users are doing. Search on mobile is growing phenomenally, right? We see, content being discovered through search, through Google and other search engines. Some of the top searches on mobile are around entertainment, news, cricket, because it's India. But a lot of this content that people are searching for is not mobile friendly. You have the portals, which are big on desktop. They have a great reach. About 27% of the people actually access these portals. But their content is not user friendly. And hence, only 2% of page views actually contribute to the portals. That's a huge gap. And that is what you as budding entrepreneurs need to fill up. Whether you already have an existing desktop site or you're going to build a mobile site, that's the kind of gap. So you think search has grown phenomenally, right? Over 100%. Guess what? Video on mobile has grown 300%. It's primarily due to the smartphone growth. You've seen the Kola Very Deep videos. How many of you have seen the Kola Very Deep video? How many of you have seen the Kola Very Deep video on mobile? How many of you have seen the Kola Very Deep video multiple times? Okay, so that's a fair amount of you who've watched it on desktop, who actually just watched it, who watched it on mobile, and who's watched it multiple times. So of the 50 million or odd views that Kolaviridi received on YouTube, 30% were through mobile. Now that's incredible. 30% of total views of Kolaviridi was on mobile, and that's pretty much what is represented even amongst you guys when I had the show of hands there. 56% of the people who use smartphones use it for price comparison and to check out product information when they're shopping. You know, you might think that that's a great sign for e-commerce. Yes, in a way it is. But people are still a little wary of transacting online for big ticket items. 71% of their total queries on search on mobile phones was for flowers. If we are to look at some of the data trends, a lot of the buying has been on travel, which is mainly airline tickets. A lot of browsing has been on entertainment sites. And maybe some buying on low involvement categories like books, which are fairly low even in terms of value that a user has to spend on mobile. So unless they overcome this fear of security and, you know, of the entire experience on the mobile phone, e-commerce is another opportunity that is lying ahead in front of you guys. You need to think local. I mean, you guys have heard local so many times, but you got to understand that the mobile phone in the user's hand lends itself beautifully to providing him a local experience. And strangely, guess where the maximum growth for mobile phone usage or mobile search query growth is coming from? You see a chart there which talks about the population. I don't know if you can read it from far. Can you actually read that chart there on the left top left? So if you can't read it, it says that towns with populations of 1 to 2 million have shown a 307% growth in mobile search query. So that's where an opportunity lies. Internet penetration has been a problem in India. All of you have talked about it in various forums with your friends. But mobile is actually offering these guys that opportunity to start accessing mobile, to start searching on mobile. And the numbers show 307% phenomenal growth in these small towns. Compared to that, even a large city with populations greater than 8 million people is showing an almost 80% growth. So it's incredible. The growth story in mobile is truly, truly incredible. Vernacular is a great example. About 43% of the searches for content on vernacular news sites happened on mobile, whereas only about 9% happened for established English news sites like Times of India. So vernacular is another important aspect that you guys might want to think about as you go forward in your careers. Some of the most popular apps, you can see the one on the left is the Mumbai local train app, the Just Dial social search app, local search app, and the Delhi Metro app. What does this say? It means that people are looking for apps that are local in nature. It means that there is a huge opportunity, again, for you guys to start thinking about what you want to do. 82% of all smartphone users have at least noticed mobile advertising. How many of you have noticed advertisements on mobile? How many of you have noticed, or let me ask, how many of you have never noticed advertisements on mobile? There are some 3 people who didn't put up their hands, or who put up their hands for haven't noticed advertisements. So it's clear that people are actually noticing advertisements on mobile, which means it's fairly acceptable because 41% of these people have actually clicked on an ad. Incredible. You'd think nobody clicks on these ads. But if the ads are proper and they are relevant and they are shown in a way which is non-intrusive, people don't mind ads. Because what ads do, and I'll talk a little bit more about these things, is allow you to offer your applications, your services for free. It allows users to get access to good applications, to good content for free. And they value that part. I mean, there are some more data there which talks about what people did after they actually saw an ad. And some of them even went onto their desktops to look for information about whatever ad they saw. In India, the mobile monetization potential is extremely promising. And why do I say that? That graph there shows the expected mobile ad spending in India in millions of dollars. And it's a huge, huge upward curve. Globally, what is this number? Anyone can tell me what this number is? Shout it out. No, I don't want you to read it. I want you to tell me what it means. So according to Juniper Research, that's right, according to Juniper Research, this is the mobile application revenue that they expect to happen by 2014, 25 billion. How many of you here are tech developers? Come on, I want the entire hall to put up their hands here. Well, almost. You guys are tech savvy. And all this is happening on mobile, on products which are based on technology. You guys are extremely sharp and smart. How many of you would not want a pie of this 25 billion in future? How many of you would want a pie of this 25 billion in future? That's it. That's a lot of you. And it's important, right? I mean, we all want to make a little money. We want to become entrepreneurs. We want to make something big. That's a huge, huge number. It's a big C. And there's something in it for each of you sitting out there. So what do? How do you go forward and, do something to get a chunk of this 25 billion? A chunk or a little pie or whatever it might be. You think of an idea, right? Wouldn't you think of an idea? Yes or no? Come on, guys. I can't hear you guys. Yes, you like to think of an idea. What's the next step? You think about what that idea might be. And then you go back in time. How many of you have played air hockey? You know that game you sometimes find in malls, a blue little table where you push that little disc across the wall, across the board. How many of you played air hockey? That's a good chunk of you, right? So you think, air hockey is fairly popular. I liked the game when I was younger, and even now. Maybe I like it even when I'm older. I still like it, much older than you guys. So let me just do one thing. Let me make an app out of air hockey. You can't go wrong with air hockey because everybody likes it. You think iPhone apps. iPhone is a great platform. Allows me to build fantastic apps. People are starting to use iPhones and smartphones in general more and more. So let me build a good air hockey app for iPhone, right? It's a great idea. Except there's one small problem. Anyone tell me what that problem is? Each of you have that idea. Each of you liked air hockey. And try and extrapolate this to the world. I'm not saying that each of you would have built an air hockey game, but so many like you would have liked air hockey as a game. And that great idea is actually part of many such similar ideas. And then suddenly you're like, oops, suddenly that idea doesn't seem so great. So, how do you make your idea stand out? Well, marketplaces on iPhone, on Android are fairly crowded with lots and lots of these apps. And believe me, with the mobile growth, it's only going to get worse. So there needs to be a way that you can actually stand out to enable you to quit your day job. Okay, so before we actually get started, I mean, we got started, but get into the main thing. What are these two? Or can you tell me what's common between these two here? Sorry? The real thing was put into an app? So people started, no. I mean, that's, so the one on the left is a game. It's an iPad game called Harbor Master. The one on the right is a donut shop in Los Angeles called Randy's Donuts. They're both mom and pop shops, right? They're both mom and pop shops. Harbor Master was built by a husband and wife combo for the iPad. And Randy, Mr. Randy built Randy's Donuts. It's a store in Los Angeles. One is an app, one is a shop. What really binds these two is that they both are businesses. An app by itself is not a business. Randy didn't just one day decide that, I make good donuts and I'm going to start my donut business or my donut shop. Before he built that huge little donut on top of his shop there, he made sure that he understood what his business is going to be like. He made a strategy for it. He decided that this is going to be my marketing strategy. He decided this is how I will run promotions. He decided this is how I will run operations. So the idea was very simple, that I'll build a donut shop, but before he set up shop, before he actually did everything that he had to do, he thought it out. He thought about the strategy. You need, as an app developer, to also think about the same. To not just build an app, to build a business. So there are certain strategies for success, and I'll briefly touch upon the main points about how you could possibly think about some of the strategies for success. Google acquired AdMob some time back, and AdMob was actually launched in 2006. The iPhone was launched in 2007, and by the time the iPhone was launched, AdMob had a fairly good understanding of how to monetize mobile apps, or to how to monetize on the mobile, right? We started off with just a few applications, but now we have thousands and thousands of applications that actually use AdMob for their business. Now, what that does is it gives us an understanding of what are the best practices that some of these successful businesses in the mobile app space have done, or what they think about. And it'll be a good idea to share with you guys some of these best practices. And the best way to share best practices is to actually talk about an example. So in the course of this discussion, I'll talk a little bit about Backflip Studios. Backflip Studios was a casual game developer. They developed the iOS, their first iOS came in 2009. It was called Ragdoll Blaster. How many of you have heard of this game called Paper Toss? It's a popular game. It's one of their most popular games. Today they have about 50 million downloads on iOS, earning about $500,000 a month from mobile monetization. Now, if you are interested in the mobile space, these are facts that most of you would have been aware of or should have been aware of. If you're not, make sure that you're aware of such facts moving forward. So the first thing you need to do is think about your strategy before you build. Talked about building an app. You have an idea, you're going to build an app. But you need to think about what is the strategy that you're going to follow when you build an app. You need to evaluate you've got to think about whether you're a one-man army who's going to be building this, or are you going to build a big team that will ultimately build these apps for you, right? If you're a one-man army and you're doing this as a hobby in your free time, then you need to have a different approach. If you're going to be building a big team, you need to have a different approach. So these are some of the things that you'll have to think about, right? You could even think about how you want to proceed with actually launching apps. Do you want to have a portfolio of apps and launch one after the other as a business? You know, something like what Backflip does. Backflip launched Ragdoll Master, it's launched Paper Toss, it's launched Ninja games, some alien attack, some shark attack, I don't know what kind of attacks. But they do have a portfolio of games. On the other hand, what's the most famous game in this crowd today? Angry Birds. Do you know the developer? Rovio. What's their strategy? How many games do they have? Probably one or two, right? Angry Birds is huge, huge. And that's their strategy, which is very different from how Backflip decided to do it. So again, those are things that you'll have to actually look at, right? To understand what is it that you want to achieve? How do you want to go forward with your, with your idea or with your set of ideas? And one of the other important things that you need to keep in mind is that you need to talk to people. You need to constantly get feedback. Never be close to feedback. Every time you're talking to somebody, so it's a common mistake, right? I mean, I've suffered from it, and I thought I'll share this with you. When I have ideas, the moment I share an idea with a friend or a colleague, the first response from most colleagues is, it's a good idea, but. The moment he says but, I butt in, and I say, no, my idea is great, because I have covered these bases. He says, yeah, I like your idea, however, there is a security angle to it. But before he's able to say the entire sentence, I again jump in, and I don't listen to the guy. Because I'm so hell-bent on just proving my point. And that's not what that discussion is going to be about. That discussion is going to get you feedback, something very, very important. You're getting to view what's inside a potential user's mind, which is, worth its weight in gold or platinum for the women. So you've got to think about getting feedback from people. Some of the other things that you need to think about is that mobile context is unique. What you can do on desktop and how you would like to present a service on a desktop is very different from how you might want to present your service on a mobile phone. You can think of booking a ticket being one of the primary reasons why somebody might access a travel service. Whereas on a mobile, as an example, some of the important things that he would like to do is check flight status. Because he's on the go. He wants to, he's on his way to the airport or train station, and he wants to know exactly what status his train or flight is at. So you have to think that simply picking up what's on desktop and putting it onto the mobile is not really the right way to go. You have to think differently. Think about your audience. Why is it important? Because the audience is what is going to be using your app. That couple there on the top left, very sweet couple, they're playing with a mobile phone. They didn't grow up with computers. Forget about using internet on phones. They probably got their first mobile phone to maybe text people or to make and receive calls. So it's very difficult for them to actually have the same usage pattern as somebody right below them. That's a group of teenagers who can't imagine life without their smartphones, without being connected onto the internet. Now, who do you want to build for? You need to think who you want to build for. Do you want to build for audience type A or audience type B? It's all good to think that you want to build for, for everybody. But you know what they say? You can please some people all the time. You can please all the people sometime. Can you please all the people all the time? Difficult. And it's the same even for mobile apps. So by understanding your demographic audience, the demographic of your audience can help you think about how you want to proceed with your idea, how you want to strategize as far as your business is concerned. A lot of companies actually fail because they lack this focus. They don't make the right set of apps for the right set of audience. And what really ends up happening is that they try and please everybody, and nobody gets pleased, and they fail. So be focused on what you want to do when you actually move forward. I said the mobile context is unique. Mobile by itself is unique. Mobile phones have unique properties. They look different. The way people's behavior with mobile phones is very different from how they would probably behave with a device like a desktop. It's a touch screen, and desktops is usually playing around with a mouse. So you've got to think about all these things. Mobile context is different. You would access a mobile phone while you're like standing at a bus stop, or at a train station, or at the airport, while you're waiting for your friend to come grab a few beers. It is completely different, and you need to keep all these things in mind whenever you're thinking about your business. That whenever you build for mobile, keep these things in mind, that mobile is not always equal to desktop. It's unique, it's different, and please be cognizant of that fact. You got to do your research. You got to make sure that you understand what the behavior of your audience is. The chart there shows, what are the number of text messages that are sent by adults versus teens. Adults predominantly tend to send between 1 and 10 messages a day. But look at that. Nearly 1 in 3 teenagers send more than 100 messages a day. Their behaviors are different. You have to understand and really ingrain this understanding into your psyche to help you strategize better. What are people doing? You can see males in general access the internet on the mobile phone to access news, whereas what women do mainly is social networking. You might not know this, but there are tons and tons of research available out there for you to go and get, and make sure you understand this, and again, helps you build out your strategy. Because again, you're not building an app, remember? You're building a business. Import dollars from US. The US mobile ad spend is expected to hit about $4.5 billion by 2015. You can actually get a pie of this, because it's expected to grow at about 35 to 45% for this year itself. And it's a huge opportunity for you to actually think about audiences in these markets and make sure that if you want to target your phone or your app to these audiences, you build for them, because there is, frankly, a lot of money to be made. The free apps versus paid apps. These are some of the top categories for free apps versus the top categories for paid apps. Games, people generally may not mind paying a little bit more, but ask them to pay for some of the other stuff, and for maybe for a sports app, less than 1%. Whereas, in case of social and shopping and travel, people are actually, there are free apps available, but they are not the top apps. So maybe that's an opportunity that you need to look at. Similar data for iPhone. Games is extremely popular, where people are actually willing to pay for the apps and get them for free. One of the most important things is you have to understand app dynamics. How are apps discovered? There are so many apps on the various marketplaces available, but there are only 50 or so top apps that are actually displayed in lists. People are actually discovering apps through marketplaces. So you need to make sure that your app is right up there for your app to actually be listed, for your app to become popular, and for you to earn money and grow as a business. Ranking on various marketplaces actually varies on the iOS store, Apple App Store. it's mainly based on downloads, whereas on the Android it's a little more complex, which kind of takes into account ranking and talks about some of the other product features that your app has. Now, talking about discovery, what is this 43%? Anyone can tell me what this 43% is? That's right. 43% of people discover apps, but that's not a complete answer. They discover apps through marketplaces. So it's super important that your app is right up there in all these marketplaces. You can create a great app, but if it's not there, nobody will discover it, and it'll be lying around. And it's kind of a cumulative effect. You're there, and it's discoverable. More people download it. It actually becomes more popular. So it's super important that you guys build an app that is there in the top 50 list for people to actually start discovering it, because that is one of the main sources for people to discover apps. You could do different things. You could actually, you have to make sure that the app that you're launching is got a good icon. A good icon at times may improve downloads. There are case studies where people have changed icon of the app from, from some other kind of icon to something else. Like, for example, there was this developer that built an app which had an icon. I don't remember what the icon was, but it was an app focused on males, and that icon just wasn't resonating. What he did was he changed the icon to a raging bull, and suddenly males started associating with that, and they kind of liked it. These are simple things. You might think these are silly. The first time I thought about it, I thought they were silly. But invariably, they're not. Because it makes a difference how you name your app, how you put the icon there. In the description, there are times, how many times have you gone into a description and found the name of an individual developer as the person who's put up the app? Many times. People don't trust individuals, they trust businesses. Put a company name in there. Name your company. If I create an app and put a name saying G-Day Agenda Tracker by Saurabh Adib, it's probably not going to get any downloads. But if I put a name instead of my name, I put a company name. I can put Google and that'll get downloads. But if I put a name like India app something, it will have a much better download rate. So having a company name means that you're serious and you're in the business, and that is when people start trusting you. Making spelling mistakes in descriptions, that's a common mistake people have. People will write descriptions and they'll misspell certain words. A business doesn't make these mistakes. A business usually will make sure that things are right, things are well done, and things are well baked. Some of the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that while 43% of apps are discovered through marketplaces, social networks have a huge impact on growth of mobile app businesses. 37% of smartphone owners have actually discovered apps through social networks. However, while good news spreads, social networks are a two-way street. Bad news spreads as fast as good news does. So you need to make sure that you're managing your social network and your social presence really well. Rovio, the guys who made Angry Birds, have a fantastic system in place there. They respond to each and every tweet that is addressed to them. Be it good, be it bad. They manage that. And unless you manage that, good news will be forgotten soon, bad news will be retained. So you need to make sure that while social networks are a great way to actually get in touch with your users and get them to download it. They may not be the they may not be the easiest way to do it because it involves a lot of effort on your end. You need to continue to delight your users. How? By providing valuable content. They need to come to your app because you give them good content. They'll come to your app, and if your content is not fresh, they probably won't come back to it, right? So what you need to do is you need to make sure that your content is updated, your content is fresh, and it adds value. Reward them for usage. Let them feel happy about having used your app. Simple things. These are very simple things. And again, some of these things may seem silly to you, but they're very important to engage your users. Because while you've built your app and you've ensured that social networks are taken care of and your apps are being discovered, that's just the download. How do you retain your users? How do you ensure user loyalty? And that is the second important part in that entire strategy that you need to think about. How do you retain your users and ensure customer and user loyalty? You should make sure that your apps are constantly being updated. You could give them new levels. Angry Birds, how many times does Angry Birds send updates? Once a month or so, or maybe once a quarter, I don't know. What does that do? Each time it's updated, I get a new level. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go back to this. So these are things you need to keep in mind. And these things have to be planned in advance. These can't be post facto. You need to keep this in your strategy, that this is how I will address ensuring user loyalty. Backflip, what did they do? They have paper toss. They started off with paper toss in an office, and they realized, hey, people are bored of the office. The game remains the same, but they changed the scenery. They took it to a casino, they took it to a bar, they took it even to the bathroom. And it worked. People are playing paper toss. They played it in the office, and now they're playing it in the bathroom. So it's important that you kind of keep engaging your users with good stuff. So, briefly, we spoke about how you're going to develop your app idea into a strategy. Your strategy should include how to make sure your apps are discoverable and how you will engage your users. There are various ways you can do this. You could go the Backflip Studio way. You could do it the Rovio way. But there's a third angle to it. And we'll talk about the third angle after a short video, which you guys can see now. Can we have the video, please?
I'm a student. Media designer, interactive designer, social media manager,
art director,
user experience designer,
web developer,
filmmaker,
digital advertising,
digital media investor. Stay electronic.
I've got iPhone.
I have an iPhone and a Droid X.
An iPhone and a Droid.
Blackberry,
Nexus One.
HTC Incredible.
I do use apps.
Lots of apps. Do I have an obscene amount of apps?
NewsRack.
Facebook or Twitter,
Twitter, Facebook, Foursquare, Lala.
GPS Drive.
Google Docs productivity stuff for work.
My banking apps, so Wells Fargo and Compass Bank.
Tiny Wings.
Words with Friends,
Of course, Angry Birds.
Angry Birds,
Angry Birds.
Angry Birds,
Of course, Angry Birds. I use a lot of
But I do pay for apps.
You're just used to paying for it.
I pay for my apps.
I pay for single apps.
Well, 99 cents and over is kind of hard to swallow.
It's a free app. They're not annoying.
I think they're discreet enough. It doesn't really bother me that there are ads over there.
Ads don't really register. Ads never really bothered me. Of course, if I ever see anything that's interesting inside of the app, that's something that I would check out, I can click on.
I think for developers, it's a good thing.
right, so you saw how people are using apps, they're using smartphones, they're using apps on smartphones, they're using free apps mainly on their smartphones, and they've seen mobile ads and they don't mind it. Nobody minds mobile ads. Which brings me to the third point in that strategy. You've engaged your users. I've built an app. How do I make money? I talked about the famous line from Jerry Maguire yesterday. Anybody can tell me what that line is? Please, if you were there yesterday, please don't say it. Show me the money. Yes, exactly. And there are many ways to actually earn money. You could have paid downloads. You could, where a user just pays a one-time fee for downloading your application. You could have a freemium model where you give your app for free initially, and if the user wants to upgrade to a better version or an ad-free version, he pays for it, which is again a one-time payment. You could have an in-app purchase, where Rovio once, I think Rovio offered some in-app purchase where you could pay money and get a mighty eagle as one of the angry birds. There are games which allow you to buy coins by paying cash so that you can unlock more levels or buy more colors in a game or whatever it might be. Lastly, there's advertising, which means you can continue to give your app for free and monetize through advertising. And while the paid model in terms of paid downloads and freemium will ensure that you have a one-time monetization, if you are confident that your app is engaging enough that your users are going to keep coming back and they're going to stick with your app, what advertising would mean is that each time your app is used, you stand to make money in the lifetime of the app and not just at the beginning when he bought that app. How do you earn money with mobile advertising? Well, there's a few steps before this where you download an advertising SDK. AdMob offers a downloadable SDK for iOS, Android, and some of the other phones. You integrate that SDK with your app. You decide where your ad is going to show on your app. You decide the position, location, etc. The user, when he downloads your app, he launches your app, and he sees a relevant ad. He sees a relevant ad, and if the ad is placed in a way that is non-intrusive, he might click on an ad if he sees value in the ad. Every time he clicks on the ad or taps it, you get paid. So show me the money. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the terms that are associated with advertising. Some of you may be aware of these terms. Are you guys aware of what CPC, CTR, ad requests, ad impressions mean? Or I can just briefly take you through that. You want me to take you through it? All right. So CPC is basically the cost per click. And we're going to take some very random examples for these numbers here. A typical, let's say in this example, I've taken 10 cents as a cost per click. So each time a user clicks on the ad, you can make 10 cents. What are ad requests? Ad requests are every time your user launches the app and there is an ad request that is sent from your app to AdMob. And that is an ad request. Let's say there are 120,000 ad requests that were sent in a day. Ad impressions are each time an ad is actually served on your app. Now you might think that I sent 120,000 requests, how come there are only 100,000 ad impressions? Each request does not necessarily translate to an ad impression because there are times when an ad may not be relevant or may not be available. So let's say somebody in Finland is accessing your app, and at the time that he's accessing it from Finland, there is no relevant ad to show, in which case an ad network would not return an ad, because there is a certain level of relevance that an ad network needs to maintain. And that is why you'll see about 100,000 impressions on the app. Let's say of those 100,000 impressions, you got 1,500 clicks. A click is simple. Click is each time a user taps on the ad when he finds it interesting. So what is the CTR? The CTR is the click-through rate, which means if I have the total number of impressions as 100,000, I had 1,500 clicks in total, my click-through rate is about 1.5%. What does clicks translate to for you as an app developer? It translates to revenue, right? So each time that there was a click, you got paid 10 cents. There were 1,500 clicks. Well, you made $150 that day. What is eCPM? eCPM stands for expected cost per 1,000 impressions. M doesn't stand for million, as some of you might think. M is the Roman for 1,000, you know. You know the Roman numerals, where X is equal to 10. So M is basically 1,000 impressions. So this is the expected cost per 1,000 impressions, which means that how much money would you expect to make for every 1,000 impression? It is a measure of the performance of an ad network. So in this case, $150 for 100,000 impressions multiplied by 1,000 gives us an eCPM of $1.5. Now, eCPM alone is not important, is not the only thing which is important. You need to make sure that you understand what fill rate is. And fill rate is what I spoke about earlier, where I said that every time that an ad request comes in, an impression is served. That's not true. The fill rate defines how many times an ad request was actually serviced with an ad. And impressions upon the number of ad requests gives you the fill rate. So in this case, works out to be about 83%. So putting all these things into a slightly more complex kind of math, if you look at network A with an eCPM of $1, which means for every 1,000 impressions, you expect to make $1 for 1,000 ad impressions, and network B with an eCPM of $3, network B seems better, right? They give you $3 eCPM, network A gives you $1 eCPM. But look at the next thing there, the fill rates. The fill rates on network A is 83%, whereas the fill rate on network B is 25%. So putting that into perspective, how much revenue do you stand to make with network A? You stand to make 83 cents for every 1,000 impressions. Whereas on network B, even with the 3 times the eCPM, you may end up making only 75 cents per 1,000 impressions. So simply by eCPM, maybe B seems better. But if you look at the entire revenue, which is what ultimately you're interested in, is network A better or network B better? Can't hear you guys. Network A is better. So there are times when people want to use multiple ad networks to monetize, right? I mean, we have a solution at Google. It's called Google AdMob. There are other ad monetization options available for mobile apps in the market. Typically, the eCPM on a network fluctuates with time, or eCPM with fill rate if you take that into account. So due to seasonality, due to some campaigns coming in, due to their strength in certain countries, etc. So it could go up and down. But the eCPM varies across various networks in time as well. So while network A had a certain eCPM, network B has another graph for the expected CPM, and network C has another one. Which one should you choose? You might want to use all of them, right? That's where you want to be. You want to be on top of that curve. How do you do that? You use something called mediation. Now, what does mediation do? Mediation takes the best expected ad for you as a publisher and serves that on your network. Google AdMob has a mediation product which allows you to integrate, apart from AdMob, some of the other ad networks that are available in the market, because we want you to make the most money. That money may not necessarily come through AdMob, which is our product. It could come from any other product. It could be any other network. But you as a publisher, as a developer, as a business, need to make more money. And through mediation, you can actually achieve that. You can't really, on the fly, like on the desktop, you can actually one day decide that I'm going to request an ad from this network, and you figure that that's not working for you, so you change the code in your server and you start accessing some other network. On a mobile app, it's different. You can't change it on the fly because it's downloaded onto a user's phone. It needs to be part of your app already. So that's why mediation products are super important for you. You need to think about these things whenever you're monetizing your application through advertising. How many of you have built an app? Can't see any hands. Okay, quite a few of you. Now you've built one app. How many of you have built another app, like 2 apps? So most of you have built one app and then you built another app. How does a user engage with an app over time? This is the typical curve that you'll find. You'll have the app take off as soon as you launch it. There'll be a peak it reaches. Then some users will kind of say bye-bye, move on to better things in life, as per what they think is better. And then you'll have a set of engaged users, loyal users who will stick with your app. That's a typical curve. When you build another app, you can actually see that the curve will follow a pretty similar pattern even there. Right? So an app A and app B could be 2 different apps, but these apps, let's say in this example, are apps that have been built by you as a business. Your business built app A and your business built app B as well. Now, how would it be if instead of waiting for app B to peak, wherever it's peaking on this chart, you can pull this forward. You can make sure that that peak happens sooner. We all would like that, right? No? Yeah, we'd like that. And how do you do that? You can actually do that by cross-promoting your app. Because you own both these apps. You have a loyal user base using app A. They use your app, which means they trust you as a user, as an app developer, or as a business. You can actually cross-promote your other offerings to your existing users and ensure that you have a much steeper curve as far as your second app is concerned. It's called cross-promotion. Internally, the feature is called house ads. Now, how house ads work? I'll again use an example, and I'll use Backflip Studios as an example here. Strike Night was an app that was launched by Backflip. In Strike Night, what they started to do was that they started to promote their next app, which was Buganoids. So a user who's using Ninjump or Strike Night, these are existing apps, let them both be app A in this case. They're using these 2 apps, and they say, hey, I like Backflip. I like these apps. These guys are cool. The apps are cool. I have enjoyed these. I'm likely to enjoy their next offering as well. And they click on those house ads. Doesn't cost you money. These are your own apps. Doesn't cost you money, but they get you users. So when they click on this ad, they're taken to the download page. You can just have a very simple messaging there, saying you like this, you can download Buganoids. And that's exactly how you reach this curve. So some of the business models that you need to think about, how you will make money off these things, is basically through the various options that I mentioned earlier. You could have standalone models. You could have a combination of these models. It's really, really entirely up to you to decide how you want to proceed, what works for you. Does an in-app purchase model work for you? Does a freemium model work for you? Do I want to go ahead with only a paid model? Will people pay for what I am offering? Or do I just want to go with plain vanilla monetization through advertising? Remember, most people prefer free apps. They don't want to pay. You saw in the video there, most of those guys who use iPhones, Androids, Blackberries, they haven't paid a cent for any of the apps that they use. So you've got to keep all these things in mind. Some best practices for advertising on mobile apps is don't bury your ads deep inside. Don't keep it somewhere in the corner because you don't want advertising, but you want to earn money. So you got to be very, very clear and very, very strategic about where you want to do this. Use natural breaks to actually show an ad to a user. A user could finish a level, and that's where his focus is a little not so engrossed in the game. And that might be a good place to show him an ad. And a relevant ad shows up, he may click on an ad. Whereas if he's in the middle of a car game, car chase sequence, and you show him an ad, hell, I don't care about that thing on top. Right? So you've got to think about these things when you're placing ads. More ads need not necessarily mean more money. It might mean bad user experience, so you've got to be very careful. And always test and iterate. Always test. Listen to feedback. All these marketplaces offer you a mechanism to get feedback. People rate your apps, people write reviews. Get all this information in, don't ignore it. And every time you try out new things, you're going to only improve your app. So you built an app and everything and you've started monetizing, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening. How many of you here are engineers? What is one thing that engineers love? They love numbers. Applying what they learn. I wish I did as well, but. So, it's a lot to do with measuring stuff, right? Engineers love to measure stuff. Engineers do things and they say, okay, how is it working? And how do you measure what's happening? It's very easy to measure downloads. Most marketplaces will actually give you, past data about downloads, how many apps got downloaded, etc., etc. Well, that's easy. But can you improve purely based on the number of downloads? Can you improve your offering? Yes or no? Partially. See, you could have a great marketing campaign and you'll download it, but what's important is how many users stick with your app, what they're doing with your app. You need to measure performance. You need to track the performance and not just the downloads. So how do you understand how people are engaging with your users? That is, it could be based on how many times they logged into your app, how many times they've done things, how many times they've, like at what levels they're stuck at, have they reached a certain level, have they never reached a certain level, is there something you need to look at? So through Google Analytics for mobile apps, you can actually measure all these things. You need to understand that it's the engagement which will give you this feedback. There's so much data. On this chart there, you can actually see that, most visits requested in terms of, in that period is between 15 and 25 times, which means roughly about, so you can set up an account and create a UA, a profile, and that's it. You're set. It'll help you track app engagement. It'll help you track where your referrals are coming from. If more money is being generated out of some users coming from a certain place, maybe you can focus on those apps a little more where the performance isn't that great. Maybe some other sources you might want to think about redirecting your marketing spends, etc., etc. There are various learnings that you can make to actually change your strategy, to modify your strategy, to tune your strategy as your app usage continues. Google AdMob is the ad monetization solution for mobile applications. Google also has an ad monetization solution for mobile websites, mainly smartphones, and that's AdSense. Most of you know about this. I'll just quickly run through some of the things that you need to keep in mind when you're talking about becoming a featured app on Android. You need to make sure that your app uses Android features in a creative way. You need to make sure that you have high ratings. You need to try to get higher ratings, and that will give you higher organic ranking. Some of the apps that may be seasonally relevant, you could build a Diwali app, for example. High quality apps, generic term, but it's actually quite deep if you think about it. You make a good quality app, people will understand, and it'll lead to some of the other things that may actually get you a much higher ranking there. Great fit and finish. Your UI has to be great. I mean, ultimately, smartphones are about user experience. You need to make sure you use some of the unique Android features, especially with any new feature, with any new features released with newer versions of Android. Include that in your app. Send an update. These are things that will help you get featured. User comments, again, very important. What kind of user comments you're getting. So before you quit your day job, really, just to summarize, remember that you're building a business, not just building an app. Remember that you need to dedicate time to planning. You need to research information about your audience, about competition, what's happening out there in the mobile world. You have to promote your app. You have to drive downloads. You have to engage your users through tests, through iterations, through getting feedback, through giving them upgrades, giving them fresh content. And don't be afraid to really experiment with new business models. There are various available. So there is this microsite that we have. It's called guidetotheappgalaxy.com. Please visit that. It's got some very important, and it's got some very useful stuff that most of you can actually use. It's got some case studies as well to help you understand. So thank you. That was pretty much what I had to say about helping you quit your day job. So I'm going to take one question now, and I'll be outside. I'm sorry, I'm out of time, and the next session is going to start. We're already running behind schedule, and we don't want you getting delayed beyond what you'd planned for. So anybody have one question, please come to the mic and quickly ask that question. I'm sorry, we'll be available outside. My colleague Naresh is also here. We'll be available around. He's right here. Naresh, can you wave to the crowd? Yeah, he's right there. We'll be around, so if you have any questions, you want to talk to us about this, we'll be happy to answer that. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Gaurav from Bhopal. And first of all...
Can you be a little louder? Can I have this on the monitor as well? I can't hear him at all.
Yeah. Hello.
Can you say something?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Gaurav from Bhopal. And first of all, sir, congratulations on acquisition of Motorola Mobility, the biggest acquisition so far. So my question is that, is this a real business strategy or a step by Google to stand or offend the Android as it's being in infancy to against the iOS as the patent wars are being going on? So is this a real business strategy or just adding the name of Google to Motorola's, as Motorola also filed a petition or patent its Siri against Apple? So that's my question.
So the Motorola acquisition is, obviously it's a strategic move. It's not a tactical move. Extremely strategic. Motorola is a fantastic technology company. It's got a lot of valuable things that Google can benefit from. And we're hoping that Google can add what Google brings to the table to actually help Motorola mobility as a business grow. Whether it is meant only to grow the Android footprint for Google, no. I wouldn't think that is a consideration that we may have had. Again, I wasn't part of the decision-making process. It would be difficult for me to comment whether it really was. You can read about some of the stuff that has been said by the people who were involved. But my guess, and it's a personal thought, is that Android as a platform is determined to always remain as an open platform, open for any app development the mobile development company to make use of and contribute to the Android ecosystem. So Motorola is probably has not been acquired with that in mind, if that is what you had.
So it's nothing to do with the patent war going on?
It'll be a tough thing to answer because, again, I mean, there are various considerations when people actually acquire companies. It could be for, people acquire, and not just Google. I mean, companies in general acquire companies for their IP. Companies acquire other companies, do acquisitions for people. They do acquisitions for competitive threats. They do acquisitions for various reasons. So I encourage you to go to the Google blog and read a little bit more about it and get it from the horse's mouth rather than getting it from me.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So thank you very much, guys. I hope I could get you thinking about, at least start thinking about how you want to quit your day job if you do. If any of you are sitting with your bosses, please shake your head now and say, no, I'm not going to quit my day job. But go back home and think about it. And, there's a ton of opportunity outside. It's entirely up to you to make use of it. Remember, $25 billion by 2014. You could have, even a small part of that is going to be significant for you. It will be for me if I can do something like that, if I was as smart as you guys. But yeah. All right, thank you very much.